Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Edge Tech Podcast. My name's Howard Chaplinsky. I'm here with Devin Gamble, Antonio Rayner. We're the co-hosts for this. This is our initial episode. Just trying to feel everything out. Got a couple of things we want to talk about today.
We're just three guys who want to talk about tech. We love tech. We pretty much have arguments about tech on a daily basis. We just love technology. So let's get into the first issue. This whole credit card payments on the phones and chips and stuff. I love them, but hate them.
Well, see, so I use Apple Pay all the time, man. Let me rephrase that. I've started using Apple Pay a lot of times. When I first had it, it was kind of, I don't know, it just seemed like a novelty to me. Honestly, I would forget because by the time I'd get up to the counter, I'd have my credit card in my hand anyway, so it wouldn't even matter. I know, Devin, do you use Samsung Pay or Google Pay?
I use both, honestly, but I've transitioned more to using Samsung Pay. It's just the technology they use there is ubiquitous. You can use it at any terminal basically. It takes a magnetic strip. It's super convenient. It's also insecure, but I don't use Android Pay as much because it relies on NFC, and the NFC functionality just isn't as prevalent in retailers. But I mean, it's really convenient. I don't like carrying my wallet.
Yeah, so, I can vouch for that because every time I try to go to lunch with this guy, he's like, I don't got my wallet.
Never.
It's true.
Always...
I mean, I'm biased too because I use Samsung Pay. One, because I got a Samsung phone. Two, the other part is I know I get points for using my Samsung Pay.
But see,
so I can get like gift cards, stuff like that. That's some of my points I get. So it's kind of like the added benefit. Oh, let me see what I can buy with this. If I buy this over here, I can get this gift card on the back end or something like that.
Yeah.
But I still be skeptical sometimes, like put on this information in my phone where somebody gets to my phone to have the information now. Granted, it's kind of encrypted, but man, it's technology. I feel like everything will break.
I don't know. My thing about especially like Samsung Pay is it doesn't require biometrics. You can just type in a PIN number, and then they're using. So, from what I understand, is with Samsung Pay, you can just anywhere a magnetic strip terminal is accepted, which I don't understand how that works because it's already using the NFC transfer protocol to get into the terminal. Why don't they just say, you know what? We're not going to just blatantly transfer unencrypted credit card information to the terminal. You're going to have to use the secure Android Pay method, like the way Apple does it. The way Apple does it is the same way that they use on the chip cards. Basically, it generates.
Nobody wants to be like Apple all the time, okay?
Look, man, we're talking about security here, all right? The magnetic strip is dead.
Okay, communist.
Oh, easy now there. You don't have to be a communist when you're talking about security, but I'm dead serious. Look at the magnetic strip. I can take anybody's credit card right out of their wallet, swipe it through a $10 card reader. I've got all their credit card information. I can take another credit card, because how many times you put CID on the back of your credit card? Nobody looks at it. You swipe it in the terminal. The clerk never even sees the credit card. I can take my credit card with different numbers on the front, take your credit card information, and rewrite my credit card with your information and use it right on the terminal. Nobody's ever going to back it.
But at the point in time, who really cares if I'm going to get reimbursed from either my bank or from the place where I bought or that my car was stolen from or used at?
Because it's a headache. Really, you got to go through all that.
So that bit is a headache, but then it's counterweighted by the benefit of being able to use the application and its functionality so much, just everywhere, like literally everywhere. I can pay for gas, 7-Eleven, all these places that also take physical chips, which we can say is a more secure method, is a card with a chip in it. That's also there, but then you have this legacy functionality of just reading the magnetic strip, which is there, and no NFC to speak of, so you can't use Android Pay or Apple Pay. This is a lot of places. Like the disparity between where you can use Apple Pay and where you can use Samsung Pay is like 10 to 1, because not everyone is taking on the ability to use NFC. A lot of places have the chip readers. Those are prevalent, but you don't have a lot of people that have the NFC functionality, so you can tap to pay. So it's a big difference. And how frequently or how likely are you to have your information stolen in this method? Because you can't steal the phone if you use biometrics on the phone. You have that same safety net because you can't use the payment method until the phone's unlocked. So how often is the data going to be stolen where it can be stolen, which is from the retailer? It's unencrypted.
Right.
It's, sometimes stored in plain text. But how frequently is that going to happen versus how often you have this ability to use the Samsung Pay where you wouldn't otherwise have that ability? And it's kind of a balancing act for me at this point. In the absence of any events where I've had to deal with fraud and the frequency with which I've been able to use Samsung Pay, it's definitely worth that potential risk for me at this point, at least.
Right. And I can understand that, but my rebuttal to that is Square, that company that does the payment.
The little mobile payments you use from your phone and stuff, swiping from your phone.
Yeah, the dongles.
Yeah, but no, they all right, easy now, because they don't even use the dongles anymore. They have a little square piece. It looks like a small mobile hotspot. You can dip the chip credit card into it. It's got the receiver, the NFC receiver. It takes Android Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay. It takes all the pay apps, and you can swipe. So with that all wrapped up, and that thing is only $35. And the best part about it, when you use Square, they will. So it costs $35 up front, but as you use the payment method, they reimburse $35 worth of transaction fees. So the device ends up paying for itself after you use it enough. So to me, there's almost no. I mean, we did talk about these big retailers that like Target and Walmart and Home Depot. Home Depot got hacked. What was that? 2 years ago now, where they lost millions of credit card numbers, and Walmart's been hacked several times, and there's really no excuse at this point. The chip cards are out there, which are, I'm going to say, they're impervious at this point in time. I'm sure there's ways to get into them, because not all chip cards are made the same. You can have chip cards that don't do the actual functionality of EMV chips. They just hold the credit card data, which, to me, if you're going to already put the chip cards out there, you might as well just do it the right way instead of dicking around. But
I mean, yeah, but you're costing the manufacturer more money now because banks want to change stuff up on you. Like, oh, since you changed stuff, now you want to make me buy a whole new system so it works for this?
That's right. Because how much do these banks lose a year in fraud?
Not very much. They off-put a lot of that cost onto the retailers. So that's why they haven't been more helpful in implementing the system. Like, it's okay to talk on high, but when all of the costs, the billions of dollars to input, a completely revamped chip reading system, when that's all on the retailer, it's easy for the banks to go, yeah, do this faster. Yeah, you guys are taking too long. What's taking so long? Oh, we'll issue the chip cards when all the retailers have them. There's no point in us doing it before that. That's a limited cost. And then when there is a fraudulent transaction, almost all the time, they can charge that back to the retailer, and it costs them nothing other than like the customer service call where someone says, oh, there was a fraudulent transaction on my account. Outside of that, they have very little skin in the game.
But you've just proved my point to the retailer. If, let's say, I go to Walmart, and right now,
but even with the chip, they'll still find some excuse why to bring it back on the retailer.
Not necessarily, because with the chip, so if your card gets stolen and somebody uses the chip, the bank eats that. Well, the bank eats part of that cost. They eat part of that cost, not all of it. Now, it is up to the retailer, because the retailer, again, is supposed to check for the signature on the back of the card or the ID on the front, which they don't do. So, yeah, this costs the retailers a lot of money because they're not doing the process. So right now, the banks say if you swipe a card and it has a chip on it and the retailer doesn't support chip functionality, if that transaction is fraud, it's totally on the retailer.
But why is that? Because all retailers can't afford to redo their system. So now it's kind of like you're handicapping the little guy.
Because they should be checking the ID.
How do you check if they're checking ID? It's so easy to print a photo ID. Like, there's tons of states where there's no special features, no holographic material, no raised ink, none of that. It's just a plain printed ID that's laminated. It's a piece of paper that's laminated with a photo on it. How are you checking whether or not they're checking IDs? And even if they do check the IDs, if I've stolen a card or I'm a person that's committing this kind of fraudulent act regularly, having the ability to quickly print fake IDs doesn't seem like a big stretch. I mean, particularly if you make this a business. If you're stealing cards, stealing card information, and then buying big ticket items and reselling them to liquidate the fraudulent funds to cycle through that cash to wash it, essentially. The cost of printing fake IDs to have someone go in, even not for yourself, maybe you have a whole conglomerate like recent, not recent, that was a little while ago, a few years back, it was found out that these hackers were stealing like a cent off of each transaction.
Oh, I heard about that. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
over time,
and
over
so
time,
they,
it's millions and millions of dollars.
yeah, but they liquidated it by having people take the money out in small ATM transactions around the world. You know, that sort of large organization isn't unusual. It's the most efficient way to transact these kind of like, you know, fraudulent transactions. It's not your average like everyday criminal that's going to be a big risk for fraud because they get caught. They get caught quickly. They're
Right.
going in people's
Because they
purses.
buy stupid
So-
stuff.
Yeah, they're
Exactly.
buying stuff on camera. You know, they're behaving suspiciously, or they look suspicious in the first place, so they're getting caught quickly. These larger groups where you're washing the money, you're stealing it here, putting it in an account here, putting it here, or alternatively, you're stealing a card, getting the fake ID for someone, buying big ticket items, selling those items, keeping the cash. And heck, you could use Craigslist where there's almost no traceability really. If someone buys a big TV, that TV is not going anywhere, and it's never going to be found again.
So here's my rebuttal to that. So you're talking about somebody steals the card, so they have the physical card in possession. They now have to make a fake ID, which can take, let's give it a couple of hours. The problem that you're going to come up with, and back when I worked at Advanced Auto Parts, we would routinely get people who have stolen credit cards, and then basically they would come in and they would buy stupid stuff, and like you said, they would try to launder it. So basically what they do is they come in and they go, oh, I want to buy a $300 gift card, an Advanced Auto Parts gift card. Like, first of all, nobody bought them. Second of all, why are you buying a $300 Advanced Auto Parts gift card? So at that point, I go, well, hey, buddy, I need to see your ID since it's over $25. What always happened is they wouldn't even ask for the card back. They just go, oh, I left it out in the car, and then they bolt out the store. So that's basically what happens. The time frame.
They was young and stupid. Like, come on, like, Advanced Auto Parts, really?
Well, hey, man, it's a quick way to get cash. But the point is if you have the card in your possession, that means the person doesn't have the card. So the owner of the card doesn't have it. And I don't know about you, but I only carry 1 or 2 cards in my wallet. And when I go to pay for something within the next 25 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, I'm going to be like, hey, where's this card at? And then a lot of times, like Discover, Wells Fargo, even Bank of America, stuff like that, you could turn the card off. So if it's like, I don't know if it's been stolen, but it's missing right now. So I just go right to the app and
They
turn it
freeze
right
it, yeah. I
So
mean,
a lot of
most banks
a lot
got that now.
a lot of things have to happen. Like, a lot of things you have to assume that a lot of things are going to happen for that to happen. You have to assume that after the card is compromised, it's stolen, you have to assume that you're going to be looking for it again within a short period of time. Let's say you went out to lunch. The next time you're going to use your card may not be until dinner or getting gas after your job or whatever.
But how fast is it going to be? How fast is it going to be for somebody to really go home, make up a fake ID, and then shoot out and go make a purchase? You're talking about.
Here's the thing: if it's one person, that takes more time. If it's someone that can call someone else and say, "Here, you have my photo already. I just need you to print an ID with this name on it," that could be ready, and it doesn't take hours to print a piece of paper, nor does it take that to laminate it. It could be, conceivably ready in an hour or two to be picked up and then utilized, and then you haven't noticed. And then if you do notice, we then have to assume that you're going to assume you didn't just misplace it. It's not sitting somewhere else like your car or at home, and that you're going to call immediately and freeze that account, which isn't what always happens. People will often rightfully assume that they left the card at some other location and wait to go look there first, and this gives you a big window of time to utilize that card. And obviously it's, you don't have days or whatever, but you could have 12 hours or 18 hours conceivably to use that card.
That's too long. A lot of the people that steal credit cards, they're just in it for short gain. They go to convenience stores and they buy $25 worth of stuff. I had my card number got stolen one time, and somebody tried to get, and it's actually kind of funny because somebody tried to buy $300 worth of groceries, and the bank blocked it because they were like, this guy doesn't never buy groceries. Why all of a sudden is he buying $300 worth of groceries, right? So that's the thing. Like, my card number in that case got compromised. The point being is Apple Pay, Android Pay, and even Samsung Pay all have the capability to do this one-time transaction code process the same way the chips work. So to me, the retailers almost have no excuse at this point because it may not be a lot of money in the grand scheme, but it's still an operational expense. The amount of money that you're losing to credit card theft or fraudulent transactions, you could turn around and over 5 years pay off these new systems. The chips are near impervious. The chip, when it gets inserted into the terminal, it sends the POS system sends information back to the bank sends information back to the cards itself, to the chip to be processed. The chip processes it and generates a code that the POS never sees the actual mathematical processing. It just gets the code and sends the information back and forth to the bank. As long as the code that the bank sent and the code that the chip on the card generates are the same, the transaction's good. It's nearly impossible to counterfeit those chips. So why wouldn't these retailers not want to say, we want to keep as much money as we can? Yeah, you're going to have some fraud. Somebody's going to steal the card, and they're going to go and spend $40 on, gas or whatever real fast, and and then that's going to be it. And the retailers may lose. And I think actually in those cases, I think the banks actually absorb 30 or 40% of the cost. Don't quote me, I'm not an expert on that, but that minimizes the attack surface in that case, because your credit card number is never in plain sight where somebody could just put it onto another card with their name on it and use it. So why aren't they investing in this? And then even now, like Europe and stuff like that, they all have the pin and chip method. So once the chips get out there and they're in widespread use, it's very simple for the banks to then say, hey, mail you a letter, send you an email and say, hey, we want you to come into a branch office when you have time and create a PIN number to make your transactions more secure. Because if you don't have the PIN, you can't use the card anyway. Why aren't we investing in this?
Money. That's why. Nobody wants to pay for the stuff up front. Nobody wants to be force-fed to, like, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z.
It comes back to convenience, too. I think Devin kind of alluded to that a little earlier, is we were talking about convenience. Nobody wants to stand there for the 5 seconds that it takes to process the chip, and then on top of that, put in a PIN number. So
yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I have my primary card has no chip on it, but it expires next month, and it's gonna be a sad day for me because, like you said, standing behind somebody in line when they have to use the chip, it's kind of like, oh, they try to swipe for it. Oh no, you have a chip. Put the chip in. Now I gotta wait another 2 minutes to make sure the process goes through. I'm just kind of like, hey, swipe my card, boom, I'm done. 30 seconds.
I don't know. I prefer that peace of mind over. Yeah, I don't mind being inconvenienced for 10 seconds while the chip does its thing, if it means I'm secure. And a lot of times now, especially like Walmart and stuff like that, you can actually insert the card while the transaction's going on. So it pre-stages all the information to send to and from the bank. And then
that's the same thing you do with my swipe. Like with the strip, I can still swipe it while they're processing it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So before you couldn't. Before you had to wait for the transaction to finish, and then it would say, okay, now I need the information from the chip. But now they've basically gotten it all ready where you just insert the card while it's waiting, and then once the transaction finalizes, it just hurries up and sends everything off. So I don't know. To me, I prefer security, and that's why I like Apple Pay. They don't say, we're not going backwards compatible. They said, no, this is the standard. We want high security. We want one-time use transaction codes. We don't want the retailers to ever see the banking information. We just want them to say, you know what, here's the information from the phone. Do your thing. Are they good? They're good. Okay, we got our money. We're done.
I feel you on that. I guess my other part is, as a consumer, first it's kind of like, hey, give me what I can use now. And then as technology, everything progresses, cool, switch that later on. But I like it now, like Devin said, I can go more places than you can and use my Samsung Pay. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, make it convenient for me right now, and over time develop smarter technology. Because if I already use my card doesn't have a chip in it now, I'm used to the same technology. I'm used to the security rest anyway. But I still have the ability to use it more places. So go ahead and give me that to me now, and go ahead and develop more software, different things to be more secure down the road.
I don't know. What do you think, Campbell?
Yeah, I'm completely on the convenience side of the fence here.
You guys are the part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean the cost it's a personal choice, right? And the cost for me, even with a fraudulent transaction, is relatively low. It's a limited time cost, and then I'm like on the retailer side as well, because they're not going to eat that cost. They're going to pass the cost along to their consumers. So they're going to pass along the cost of installing these systems. We all are in agreement to varying levels that these systems are slower. The degree obviously depends on the implementation, but they're slower than swiping a magnetic strip, and even slower than that if you include the chip plus pin duality. So that's going to require the retailer to either get more efficient with their checkout process, or they're going to have to add staff. to accommodate this slower process. Because people won't bear long lines, right? And every second adds up. If they're spending a minute or two on each person on average, and now we have an extra 20, 30 seconds just for checkout. That's another 50 or 25% more time for each person checking out, sitting, waiting for the system to process the payment. All of these costs, extra staff, the cost to install the systems, those are all passed on to me as a consumer. Whereas on the back end, if there is a fraudulent transaction, the only thing I have to do is make a phone call and maybe supply some supporting documentation. Maybe the phone call takes 2 minutes. The supporting documentation obviously can vary, but that's only a couple minutes of time. All the time that I save waiting in line, in addition to the cost that would be theoretically passed down by the retailer, I'm completely on the side of utilizing, for the time being, as long as it's available. I know the whole industry is moving away from this, but utilizing magnetic strips in particular in a phone where I can store multiple cards in a digital format and use them at these magnetic terminals as the retailer slowly rolls over to the new tap to pay system. Here's the thing. If everyone has the EMV, NFC, tap to pay functionality installed, I have no reason to need to use a magnetic strip.
Right.
In the absence of that, with a bereft, ecosystem that doesn't include this, by majority even, I don't want to have to rely entirely on that technology or carrying around a card. I don't want to carry around a card. I don't want to carry around a wallet. I don't want to put a card in my phone. I don't want that. I just want to be able to use my phone for as much as possible. Take photographs. This is obviously a tangent, but take photos, make phone calls. All of these bundled services, make payments, edit, documents, light editing for documents. All of these functionalities I like bundled into the phone. The phone is expensive. I want it to be able to do as much as possible. And I don't want to, stealing a word from or a term here from Howard, I don't want to kneecap the phone's ability or its its productivity, its feature set. I don't want to limit that by not using this just because it's more risky for the retailer. It's a low risk for me, and that's where I stand on this. I don't see myself going anywhere different unless they make the whole fraud process of reporting much more difficult, and then I'll probably move to another stance. But as it sits now, with this consumer-friendly process for reporting fraud, I don't have any reason to be concerned with what it puts the retailer through. And for me, it's obviously a much greater benefit. So,
right.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I think what it's really going to take is it's going to take government regulation. The payment card industry, PCI, already has standards out there. They basically say, here's how the systems have to work. They have to have this kind of encryption. They have to be this kind of segregated, blah, 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 blah. What, to me, the only way to really push this, and I know you said that some of the cost is going to get pushed off onto the consumer, and that's going to be true. I mean, that's true of everything. Minimum wage goes up, they push the cost on the consumer. That's the way it is. But that cost can be significantly offset by the amount of by the reduction in fraudulent charges. Think about it like this. Let's say a retailer, let's take Walmart, for example, averages $10 million in fraudulent charges a year, which might be a drop in a bucket to a billion-dollar company, obviously. But if they're averaging $10 million a year, let's say for 5 years, it's $50 million. How much does it really cost to upgrade these terminals? If it costs $100 million, let's say, across the entire company, in 10 years, if they've let's say they've eliminated $8 million from their fraudulent charges budget a year, so they still have $2 million in fraud. You're talking about within 10 years, they could nearly pay these systems off. So those systems aren't going to go anywhere for a while. The magnetic strip has been the same since when, the 60s, 70s? I mean, it would have probably been the 80s in all reality because of the phone system. But those they haven't gone anywhere. That technology hasn't changed. It's the same way Social Security Social Security numbers are. They're not built to be safe. The number on the card is plainly readable, like I said earlier, with a $10 thing I can buy on Amazon and get shipped to my house. There's no security built in. There's no encryption built into it. It's got to go. That's the way it is. If somebody steals you can't steal the chip. That's the thing about the chip. You can't steal it. It's in the card. You have to take the card. And yes, there's going to be a point where I don't notice it at first that my card's missing. But most people are pretty astute. I keep my card in my wallet. It's always in my wallet. I never have it outside of my wallet unless I'm paying for anything. And I don't want to say I'm a paranoid kind of guy, but I do check to make sure my wallet's in my pocket, stuff like that, fairly regularly. But
you're a paranoid guy.
take it easy now. But yeah, I tap my back of my pants and just say, "Oh yeah, my wallet's there." If I tap the back of my pants and my wallet's missing, then I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, what happened to my wallet?" And then I may spend a few minutes looking for it. But if I know I've got my bank card and I've got one credit card on me, and both of those cards support that go on the app and freeze them really quick feature. If I know for a fact that I've been out all day and my wallet's been in my back pocket all day and now all of a sudden it's not there, I'm just going to go to the bank app, turn it off. I'm going to go to the credit card app, turn it off, and if I find my wallet later, I'll just turn it back on. It's that simple. There's no phone calls to make or anything there, so there's almost no excuse not to do this. It's just it's money.
That doesn't make sense. You talking about the chip? Even my car gets stolen, I don't have a chip in my car. I can still freeze it. So, I mean, if it gets stolen, it's still possible that somebody use the card anyway.
Yeah, but the card that you have that doesn't have the chip is going to be like the 1 out of a million. It's even my buddy's small time credit union. They even have the chips in there.
Oh so, no, like I'm getting the chip. Like I got Navy Federal, so like one of my Navy Federal cards has the chip. Just this card hasn't expired yet to force me to get the chip yet. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's kind of like I don't have that chip yet just because I didn't want to go to the bank and get a new card to have a chip.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like all the big banks, like every single one of my cards has the chip in it, and even the bank that I used to have, that you're talking 2 years ago now, it was a smaller regional bank. They even issued chips like that. I mean, it wasn't even an issue. So these chips are already out there. The technology has been around for years. The DoD uses it in their common access cards. I mean, the technology's been out there for years, and it's been proven to be almost completely impenetrable. It works on public key infrastructure. The chips themselves are built to withstand, tampering. The only way to really steal the information from the chip is if you physically tamper with it. And I'll tell you from experience, I had a dead credit card that had one of those chips in it, and I just kind of wanted to see it. I'm a nerd. I like to look at that kind of stuff. I tried to open that thing up, and it literally turned into just pieces in my hands. I mean, it just disintegrated. And yes, there are techniques to analyze those under microscopes, but the thing about them is, once somebody actually does that, you're going to notice that the card is missing, and you're going to get a replacement. So even if somebody manages to analyze that stolen card under a microscope, it's null and void because the information that was stored in that particular card is now dead, and I've got a new card. So it's...
I hear you. I feel like right now it would be good, for maybe first 2-3 years. But I feel like as technology advances and criminals get smarter, there's gonna be a way to crack that. There's no way in the world it's gonna be impenetrable for forever. No, it's like because we first thought the magic chips were so great and everything else, but I'm like somebody's gonna crack that chip in like 2 or 3 years.
Well, normally I would agree with you there, but this technology has been out there for a while, and it's like I said. Now there are a handful of vulnerabilities,
but been out there for a while. The more been out there for like the government, different things like that, but not been out there long enough, like in our credit cards.
Well, that's the thing. They work on a similar principle, and in fact, I would almost even say that PCI, so credit card companies, almost have more incentive to harden those chips than the government does, because if the government's chip system doesn't work right and data gets leaked, nobody's suing them per se. It depends on what data gets leaked, but nobody's suing them. Versus if my chip card doesn't work and my information gets stolen, now there's a huge class action lawsuit. So these credit card companies almost have incentive to make this bulletproof. And the technology, the way it works, is 99.99999% bulletproof. Obviously, there's a handful of flaws here and there. It depends on how the retailers handle it. It depends on the implementations. But if you use high security standards with the correct methodology, it's almost bulletproof. I'm going to say it's bulletproof. If it's done correctly, it's completely bulletproof. And that statement may change. Let's say 5 years down the road. Obviously, they broke SSL with Heartbleed not long ago, so that may change, obviously. But for the time being, today it's bulletproof.
Yeah, you're right. In 5 years, we might have some other type of card. You never know.
They may do
You know.
away with credit cards. You might have to put like a tongue print or something on the machine
Yeah.
to take a
Or they might.
DNA sample.
Yeah, they might just try to do fingerprints or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like they might do something totally different. You never
yeah.
know.
I don't know. Any last thoughts on this, Gamble?
Subdermal RFID chips are probably where we're gonna go next. People like.
I
Oh
think
wow.
I'm serious. They're already in implementation. Some tech companies as as an alternative to like other biometric or
Mhm.
or an alternative to biometrics.
This guy wants to go straight up demolition man right here. He's gonna have the little chip in his hand.
Yeah, I mean that's hard
Yeah.
to steal. If you keep the information encrypted with a key that's almost impossible or impossible to hack realistically, then you've got a really secure system, and then
Yeah,
you be able to get some of that convenience back by and processing speed by the time
yeah.
that's implementation. So
And then you could
that,
also you could do two-factor authentication there. You have the subdermal chip in your hand. Basically, you just create a hand scanner. You put your whole hand on the reader, it reads the chip, and it takes your handprint at the same time, and boom, there's your two-factor. So,
Yeah, I don't know about getting no chip embedded in me though, but okay.
yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of it. Don't get me wrong. That's a story for another day. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'd have to see. But I mean, we put chips in our cats and dogs. So what the hell? Might as well get them too. It's fashionable.
Yes, my dog doesn't have a chip in him. I didn't believe in that. So
And that's fine. To each their own.
Well,
But
yeah,
I'll be sure to ignore your printed help find my dog signs when he gets off. I'm gonna take the Howard angle and say, hey, well, you knew the risks.
there you go.
You
Hey,
decided not to
You knew.
that,
knew
that's
what
why
could happen.
I train my dog well. He knows. He goes outside. He might run for a little bit, go to the bathroom, and then he's back at the door looking like I'm ready to go back inside now.
He knows
So
where the
that-
food is.
until that taco truck with fresh carne asada rides by. He loses all memory of the training that he's had throughout his whole life, and all he smells is meat.
Yeah, he's gonna be like a brainwashed agent. Like, I don't know what happened. Oh man. So moving on, boys. AOL announced the other day that they're getting rid of AIM. December 15th.
Man, it's a sad day in the world when you get rid of AOL and AIM. You know,
Yeah.
I know back in my day, I'm only 30, so back in my day, being in the AOL chat rooms and everything else, like ASL, then you start doing the aiming, like that's partially how I got my typing skills up to be fast. Is because having conversations like, oh, you're trying to hurt me, throw something in. AIM
Mhm.
taught me a lot of things, everything I know about computers,
about the birds and the
conversation.
bees.
Yeah, and you talking about, oh, you telling me bye bye? It's like I said, the realization, like, yeah, I'm getting old.
Who you telling, man? I mean,
It makes me sad.
you're 30. We're not far behind you. I mean, nah. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't a huge user of AIM towards it because, yeah, like I said, I'm a couple of years younger than you. But I mean, I did use it from, definitely like the mid 2000s till about 2006, 2007. I mean, maybe even later than that, maybe 2008. I mean, like Gamble said, it makes me sad too. It's
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, when you say anything about AOL, and hearing the old dial up, that's it. You got mail, like all that comes with it. Like that's what you're used to hearing. It's like you just have these little cool little names and everything. It's like, oh, who's online, And now you don't have that. Granted, I haven't used AIM in like what over 10 years,
who knows,
but it's still the whole principle. Like that was part of my childhood growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like an icon like of my childhood died. Like it's a product that I haven't even like seen in operation in a very, very long time. But just making it official, the death of the system, its sunsetting is just
Yeah.
it's a very like I don't know, it's sad to say, but it's like an emotional experience or like a visceral like kind of jarring thing to live through. It just puts in perspective how time kind of flies by in technology, for sure. Like this technology was only 10 years ago we were using it prevalently. It
Mhm.
died down, but its whole life has only been like 20 years in total. From its early onset to its peaking in the late 90s and early 2000s to it slowly reaching its grave here and now. And that's opposed to other communication mediums that have lasted for decades and decades and decades. It's just weird to see it go. And just consumers are so fickle. I mean, we still instant message. It set the kind of like foundation for all of the stuff we use now. Facebook Messenger.
Honestly, I would say too, it kind of set the precedence for like text messaging as well, because you got to think about it. Well, AIM, they don't first want to have like the little quote unquote emojis, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
AIM. I actually used MSN Messenger more than most, just because I don't know. I had some nerds that were like, "Oh, I don't like AIM. I'm too cool for AIM." Let me put on my fedora, but yeah, like you said, the emojis, like that's all that stuff came from those platforms, and that was all carried over into cell phone manufacturers, iPhone, Android, BlackBerry. They carried that stuff over. I mean, so they really did a cultural shift because, I mean, do you guys remember T9 typing, trying to type out those 5-cent text messages that you only got like 6 of them a month? Like,
yes, absolutely.
Oh boy! But yeah,
I remember when you were charged individually for them, and I had someone that was on like he was on AT&T, a family member that was on AT&T. He was a teenager at the time, and he had like a Palm Trio or something. He was a real popular guy. He somehow got $1,200 in overage charges just from texting, and it wasn't like, by today's standards we don't count them anymore. But it was only like maybe 2,000 text messages or something. I see my stats for the month from my carrier, and that's just like an average month. But at that time, it was acceptable too. It's like, oh yeah, you should have known better. Like,
yeah.
And we like, once again, we just come like a million miles from that point where text messages aren't even counted at all, let alone charged individually for them outrageous amounts.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, I got a BlackBerry Curve, right? I was with AT&T, and this was early high school. I thought it was a big shot over here, big CEO man, right? And I had a BlackBerry Curve, and they were like, "Oh, well, do you want to pay for?" And they didn't even ask if you wanted to pay for internet service, because there wasn't like a subscription for internet service, because they still charged like $1.50 for internet service a minute or whatever. This was straight up: do you want email, or do you want IM, or do you want both? And I was like, "Oh man, you can get IMs on a phone? Like, what is this world?" Like, that wasn't even that long ago. That was like 2006, 2007. It's like, you can get instant messages on a phone? What is the future coming to? Like in 10 years, we're just going to have like space cars and robot arms. Like that, to be there in a time where AOL was on a cell phone of all things. Like, I mean, you're talking, you could barely make calls on these things at the time without, bad reception. Now it's like, I use my cell phone for near everything. I can put it up on a screen and get a keyboard and type out, and it's we didn't have that back then. You straight up either had a physical keyboard or you were going old school T9 11111. Finally I found it. Oh no, I passed the exclamation point. Now I got to keep typing 1 until I can get it again. No.
I think this is the realization of this too. It makes me think about the times where like you had cell phones, but it wasn't. Your minutes get free to after 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Nights and weekends.
Yeah.
like all this brings us back full circle. It's like, oh yeah, you try to talk to me. Hey, I'm over my minutes. Come back after 9 o'clock. When it's free. It's like, just like AOL AIM has like so much embodied into it. Makes you think about like your youth, like when you were younger. Like, hey, what the times were like? Like you said, now it's kind of like you get unlimited text messages, unlimited data. You get like everything's unlimited for like $50, but back then it was kind of like, oh no, they nickel and dimed you after a certain point,
Yeah.
For no good reason. I mean, that just as another like side note, the carriers in the United States are like horrible. Like, what, like are you controlling congestion when the only thing you're supporting is like SMS and phone calls, and you're controlling it by putting people into the evening, and it gives you like a decade to actually upgrade your network system, and then when you do upgrade it, then you raise all your costs to get the money back a second time. And they're just terrible. And then like Sprint and T-Mobile are trying to merge, and we'll have less competition. It is the worst like cellular market like ever. No fault of AIM. Like AIM was great, but the carriers have been terrible, and they continue to just not be very good at all. Like, you have one job, literally. one by itself a service. Like you're not Samsung, you're not this big Kybal with 50 different business arms. I mean, Verizon has another, separate arm, but their most profitable arm is their wireless arm, like because they charge outrageous amounts for a network of the upgrade at a snail's pace. Oh, we spent $5 billion last year on upgrades. Okay, sure you did.
But the service is awesome. So don't come from Verizon, okay? I'm biased.
The service has been awesome. You inherited all of this network and you got way out in front of everyone else, and you just kind of ridden that network. Like their big thing is like, look at our coverage. Okay, your coverage is there because you didn't have to buy into the market. You inherited all of this infrastructure, and you were able to just build upon that. And that doesn't take very long when you're charging out the nose for service in remote areas. I mean, they're cutting people off when they actually have to pay for it. That's how you know. Like people in like rural areas where they have roaming agreements with local carriers. That means they have to pay like market rate. They just cut people off because they don't actually want to pay anywhere near the cost that they're charging the consumer. Like they love their super high markups, super high margins, and you have a great network, but what are you doing with it? Like you're not getting out ahead of the Western European telecoms or the South Asian and Eastern Asian telecoms. You're just stagnant, and you're ahead but stagnant. Yeah, Sprint's way behind as they bet on the wrong technology.
CDMA.
Well, Verizon was using CDMA. Their problem was
they both banked on a horrible technology. The rest of the world, I mean, name me another carrier that uses CDMA besides Sprint and Verizon. It's everybody out there is GSM. So
even across the world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to put it in your retrospect too, is the U.S. is lacking pretty hardly behind in telecommunications speed, efficiency, everything, in network in general, and it bites. But when I went to Japan, hotels of all places had 100 megabit per second internet connections. Because I thought the speed was going to bite. No, I fired up speed test and it was like, 100 megabits per second. I was like, you know how much money I got to pay to get this back home? Like, I'm getting this for free in a hotel. And then on top of that, we went to Kamaket there, and this is a massive. You go there and buy manga, you go there and buy anime. It's a huge convention. In fact, they have a specific convention center for it that holds millions of people in there. Maybe not millions, let's say hundreds of thousands of people. And I thought the service was going to be terrible on cell phones because I went to a concert and I lost service, and this is here in America. But when I was at this convention, even with 250,000 people packed into this convention, I still had not only good service, but fast internet speed, which I was way caught off guard by. And it's like, how is this not back home? Like, how do we not have this? And we don't
have the infrastructure. We don't have the backhaul to deal with the data throughput of having a bunch of people all in one limited space. And then we don't even have the wireless or the cellular network technology in place to even help that many people or have that many people connected in a limited space. We're using like 700 megahertz frequencies in 14 and 1900 when you need like 4,000, 5,000 to have the real bandwidth to deal with that many people in one space. Not to mention the cellular network density we also don't have here, even in big cities. Like the big cities are good enough for outside of like rush hour, good enough for not too many people, not march for a concert, and that like the carriers are perfectly fine with that because no one complains until it's a problem and then they forget it's a problem. Like I've had my cellular service drop when I'm in a big group of people in a big public space. I don't complain. Like I complain about it in that time span and then I just forget about it. And I feel like a bunch of consumers are like that, and the carriers don't hear enough complaints about it. There isn't enough choice. There isn't a carrier that's like, I'm going to go all in and invest and have the best network by far. That's not Verizon. Verizon's network is good, but their good part is them being able to work in rural areas, which isn't the problem that we have here. They have the low frequency bandwidth or low frequency bands to themselves that'll propagate for long distances. Yeah. And they have that. They have those remote areas, and then so they get the most coverage percentage and most number of POPs covered. They don't really have the speed well above anyone else. I know they're slowly upgrading to LTE-A, air quotes around it. They're slowly upgrading to that, which will, increase speeds. but they're not far ahead of AT&T or T-Mobile in terms of either downlink or uplink speeds. They're best, but not way ahead of anyone else, and definitely not from any extreme investment in their network. But I don't think it's an apple to oranges comparison. Japan's pretty limited geographical space. I think a better comparison is probably someone closer to our size, like a China or an India, maybe even Germany can compare to at least like a region of the United States. It's much easier for like South Korea or Japan to really build out because they don't have as much land to cover. And then the land they do have, most of their people are in these like major population centers like Tokyo or Seoul. So it's not apples to apples comparison, but nevertheless we have like major issues. The ISPs don't want to build out their networks correctly, and then they want to charge exorbitant access fees to the cellular carriers. The cellular carriers don't want to build out their networks.
And it's crazy. It's crazy that you say that because when you think about the Bell telephone system, so I'm kind of like a older history. Think about it though. Think about it. So I'm kind of like an older technology nerd, I guess. I watch a lot of like guys talk about like old technology, and Bell Labs actually has like these videos from the 60s and 70s where they were like, yeah, here's the innovations only coming from Bell Labs. Now, they were a monopoly. We're not going to get on that obviously today. In fact, we're way off topic because we were talking about AOL Instant Messenger, cough cough. But no, when you think about Bell Technologies, like people won Nobel Prizes that worked at Bell. They invented the transistor. They invented CMOS. They invented stuff and this was a telephone company that did this. So this wasn't government funded research for the army. This was we want people to be able to talk to other people over a phone. Now, granted, they were charging them like $3 a minute, but the fact that a single company could put so much money into R&D and come up with, Telstar, for example, the first telecommunications satellite, and they come up with the at the time it was I believe it was the AT&T long lines. That was microwave-based transmissions across the country to allow for wire-free cross-country talking. And what this did was it allowed them to expand out into the western part of the United States a lot faster. They didn't have to build out towers to run long lines. They literally popped up 2 transmitters and receivers, and they just fired off radio signals between them. And this technology would later become adapted into radar systems and stuff like that. And it's crazy to think, or I'm sorry, vice versa, radar systems type technology gets adapted into this. And it's crazy to think that a telecommunications company is doing this type of things. Like the fact that these people can win Nobel Peace Prizes for advancing technology to allow people to talk on the phone. And we don't have that anymore. When was the last great innovation almost from the United States? It's when?
Social media.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Stuff that nobody cares about.
You can't say that millennials are taking over. They care about the social media. They care about their tweets and updating their status and their location. I'm doing this and check out my cutest picture. I need all these likes. So you can't say that nobody cares about that because, as you see, social media has taken over the world.
Look,
and things aren't as transformative anymore. It's kind of hard to. It's like the transition from 1080 to 4K versus the transition from 480 to 720 or 1080, because we've been accustomed to all of these pieces of technology over the last 15, 20, 25 years. The big jumps aren't really there to be made anymore. Organizations are still within the U.S. are still making big strides in fixing technological problems, and they require a whole lot of brain power, but they don't dramatically change consumers' lives. They don't dramatically change society because we've already made that big. All of us define this. We're at the point of marginal utility where even though you just figured out how to shrink the die process for the CPU in half, or you've gone down by 60, 80%, that's not the same to me as me going from reading my newspaper and watching my tube television to now having this personal computer in my office that cost me 4 months' wages that can suddenly do something that nothing that I've experienced has ever been able to do before. Now I have this screen where I can enter prompts and make it print out something, type on this keyboard. This is a whole new experience. I used to have to send letters to get information to someone or go to a special place where there was a phone. Now I have one in my house where I can call all the way across the country or to another continent. These are like world-changing events
Yeah.
for people, and it takes the same amount of like information to figure that out as it does to take an OLED screen from being a pentile submatrix to a standard RGB submatrix without the blue diode losing as much or losing luminosity faster than the other colors. It takes the same amount of genius to fix both of them, but people don't even notice that their new S8 or S8 Plus doesn't have the pentile matrix that their S5 had. They just go, oh, it looks better. This year's is better. It's not world changing, despite the fact super smart people work to fix that problem. And these super smart people likely also would have been able to invent the cellular, the telephone technologies that the Bell Labs folks did, given all that money and time and resources available to them. Or just at a point where the next big thing has got to be earth shattering in order for it to really to stick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So to put it in layman terms, we did it, I guess is what you're saying, huh? we made all the big inventions. Everything else from here, society might as well just put his sweatpants on and just go sit on the couch. Like, we did it, we're done.
No, there may be another big turn, but you have to think. There were big industrial.
I'm joking
changes
around there, obviously.
But we also may be at the end of the rope. Like, we've had like centuries of like explosive knowledge growth, explosive industrialization, explosive computerization at this point. Where could the next big thing come from? Maybe, autonomy, completely autonomous machines.
You know what?
Take society, that may happen, but because it's already thought of and, it's a realistic possibility for us, even if it does happen, it'll happen gradually and we won't be shocked by it. It won't be like, oh, that one person invented this autonomous, robot or android, because we've already seen renditions of it over and over again at, progressively more efficient levels, more realistic, closer to passing the Turing test levels of operation. So when it actually happens, no one's going to be surprised, and it's not going to be one person that gets pointed to by society.
Right.
The Nobel committee may find the person that has like the algorithm that allowed machine learning and natural learning to come together and mesh, and another person that brought a quantum computer to a nano scale, and those two people win a prize for it. But the world at large is going to go, oh, you remember when we had Face ID on our iPhones? And look at where we are now. But no one's going to go, oh, like things have changed so much, until they look back and go, dang, I don't have to drive anymore.
Yeah.
My food served by, without me speaking to a person. All this stuff happens at home. That may be where we go next.
No, yeah, I completely agree with it. I'll tell you what the next big invention is going to be. It's probably going to change the world, to be honest with you. It's going to be AOL Instant Messenger 2.0.
Exactly.
Wait, what?
That's it. We're just going to go, look, it's going to be telepathic text messaging, all right? They're going to implant a chip directly into the back of your head. The movie WALL-E, we're just going to be floating around on chairs, just hashing out stuff, recycled. No, I'm kidding, but no, I agree with your points there. I mean, I guess it does make sense, because it's easy to make these great leaps and strides in technology if there's nothing. If I'm out here with no telephone and somebody invents a telephone, it's like, holy shit, this is amazing. You mean I can call people around the world on this thing? Like, now it's like, telephones are there. We're basically making them better. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot more innovation over time versus just instantaneous. Like, hey, there's telephones. Now you can talk to your neighbor. Now you can talk to your entire East Coast. Now you can talk across from the East Coast to the West Coast. And oh my God, now you can talk around the world. So yeah,
dude, my phone has an infrared scanner.
Yeah,
the infrared scanner would have sounded like German to Americans in the 1990s, like early 90s. Oh yeah, we'll have scanners in our phones that can scan the print of your iris using a sensor.
Shut up and take all my money.
Yeah, like no one would have believed it.
Yeah.
And now it's in a phone, and it got like a lukewarm reception. No one even thinks about it, but it's incredible that you can even fit an infrared scanner into something that small, because the older systems were huge. They needed a big amount of space. You needed a whole foot by 2 foot section of a wall to put all of the circuitry to do the processing and the sensor and the laser. And now it just fits into a tiny, 5 millimeter strip across the top of a cell phone. And it's also we're so deadened to it that no one notices, no one cares, no one talks about it. But it's amazing, right? It's amazing technology, and we're at this place where things aren't shocking for us anymore. And it sucks, but it's also great, right? But it sucks. Like we need bionic changes and like improvements for people to really care. Like, improve people's memory. Like we can install this in your brain and you'll never forget anything. You'll be able to recall your memories like instantly.
Like you're watching a movie, yeah.
Yeah, we need something like that to happen for there to be another like feeling of progress. We're constantly progressing, but for a feeling of progress to be there, it's got to be just earth shattering.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, back in the '90s, I had a Nokia brick that I could only. In fact, it was so bad. '99, my dad was like, first of all, you can't call nobody, let alone texting, like we were talking about earlier. You can't call nobody except for me and your mom because we're on the same plan. You guys remember this? When you were on the same plan, like the same family plan, the calls were free. But if you called somebody off plan, you had to pay for the minutes. And then they went to, if you call somebody on the AT&T network, it's free. It doesn't count against you. And then it's like, but if you call somebody on Verizon, I mean, now we obviously take all that stuff for granted. But I mean, now look, I mean, that was 2003. I had, those brick phones, stuff like that. And then, I mean, look at where we are now. I mean, the phones in our pockets are as fast as laptops, not laptops per se, but like netbooks. It's incredible, basically, I guess is the way that we've come.
But the early days to get there, we're now going into like, the new A11 has like 40 to 60% more processing power than last year's chip. Whereas then we were going, that chip last year was running at 22 megahertz.
Yeah.
We're at 66 this year. We're at 300%. Like,
and that was earth shattering. So, and when you're talking earth shattering, it's like, before we could type. In fact, that was so earth shattering back in them days. We can type so many characters on a screen and it has enough processing power to do it. But to now, it's 66 megahertz. I can make graphics with this. Like, I can make bitmaps. Like, this is incredible. Like, I guess you're right, man. We're so deadened to advances, like incredible advances in technology that we just kind of expected. So, but back on topic. AOL Instant Messenger dead 20 years. Man, what a run. It's going to be sad to see it go. I remember, I don't know if you guys ever watched the Mythbusters final episode, but that actually kind of broke my heart a little bit to see the Mythbusters go, because it was like, and the worst part is the last season, I didn't really watch the last two seasons, to be honest with you, but it was just like, man, I grew up with the Mythbusters and now they're gone. So I guess that's kind of the feelings I get from AOL Instant Messenger at this point. Is it's like, I grew up with AOL Instant Messenger and it's gone. Like
I didn't know the Mythbusters was gone. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you just broke my heart right now.
Oh, easy now. They've been off the air for 2 years. You guys are tardy to the party. I'm sorry to let you know.
But they're always on. They're always having replays of. That's why I never thought they went off.
Yeah, man, they're gone, buddy. I'm sorry. Watch the last episode. The last season is actually really good, and it's a shame they went off the air, because if you look at the first season, it looks like somebody shot it with a handy cam. But the last season, it's like, here's 4K, full 1080p. They hired people to do graphical design, so there's really high end graphic work done on these things, and it's incredible. And I'm like, man, this is going off the air. This is awesome. But yeah, check out that last season. It's really good. But
everything has a season, huh?
Yeah, everything comes to an end. Insert obligatory "Only Time" by Anya right here. Don't actually do it because we'll get copyrighted. Oh man,
Android is the best.
All right, let's try that one at a time.
R.I.P. AIM.
Yeah.
Android is king.
Oh, here we go. I'm cutting that out. But
don't cut that out. You leave that in there. You leave that in there, okay?
All right, you're getting too antsy there. I'm gonna mute you. No, I'm fine.
And Android could have saved AIM, given the opportunity.
AIM would have took Android with him, but
what?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're talking crazy now. Yep, that's in the show. You're talking crazy. You're not feeling too well.
Yeah, that's right. I'm off my meds. Oh. Anyway,
I wish they could have survived. That really would have been great. But I don't think there's anything from that era that has survived other than Google.
Well,
Google's been a mainstay.
what's the point of AOL Instant Messenger? I mean, the point at the time was texting wasn't a thing; it was too expensive, and there was no other way to communicate besides email, and you can't have an instant communication via email. It's especially in the dial-up days. So at this point, with 50, 60 megabit per second internet in my pocket, what's the point? There's really, and I hate to say it, but there's really no way for AIM to innovate to a point where they could stay relevant. They did one thing, and they did it incredibly well. They did instant messaging, and that's what it is.
Well,
but that's dead. That's gone.
They could have added the social functions that are popular now. Obviously, that would have had to been very forward thinking. But have they gotten on kind of the MySpace deal and kind of integrated maybe photo sharing, like a photo sharing, maybe like a page, as opposed to being entirely instant messaging? They add like a profile section where you can also like have really kind of expanded public view of yourself for the world to see. And if they integrated that could have, like, they may not have lasted this long because people just kind of go in waves with fads and things like that. At least they wouldn't be so useless like they are now. And I mean, there's still like text messaging apps that are exclusively text messaging, like what is it, like WhatsApp and Flickr, I think. There's apps that do that, but all the rest of the messaging is all bundled into these social media platforms now, like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And so that still exists. People still have still feel the need to want to communicate with each other quickly, share emojis, not use text messaging, even though text messaging is available, and they still feel the need to do that. It's just they don't want to do it on AIM because AIM is like old, died. It's hard for me to wrap my head around how they were doing something so well, and these other people took what they were doing and just ran with it, became more popular with it, and they just withered and died, even though nothing about what they were offering was changing. They weren't like Enron, where like the curtain was pulled up and like revealed the wizard underneath the curtain. They continued to do what they did well. Nothing changed. They didn't lose a bunch of people's information.
That was the problem right there. They did exactly what was well and never wanted to evolve.
Right.
As you know, in this day and age, it's all about evolution. So yeah, you found something strong, you're good at it, cool. But how can you evolve from that and keep giving the people what they want, or giving the people what they want, but they don't know they want it right now?
Right. That's the thing. I mean, like I said, they did instant messaging incredibly well, but it's just at that point they stuck to the niche, and it was great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the product was great. They did it well. They did it right, but it just the spectrum just moved on past instant messaging. I mean, look at even text messages. So with iMessage, that's an instant messaging platform. If you really think about it, it uses the internet to transmit text. You can use emojis. I mean, that's just it. Now, I will say this about AOL: while AIM is going to be dead at this point, it's the legacy of AIM is going to live on. I mean, if you look at MSN Messenger, IRQ back there? Exactly, who used IRQ? But that evolved into modern text messaging, like we were talking about earlier, with emojis and things like that. I mean, the only thing in a text messaging application that we don't have that AIM does is chat rooms and profiles, if you really think about it. And they have that embedded into Facebook Messenger. So, but the legacy of AIM is there. It's going to live on. AIM inspired those products.
Yeah, AIM was like you said, AIM was the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
They got everybody paid homage to AIM. Like, AIM, thank you for showing us what we need to at least have a basis of, and we'll take that from there and run with it.
I'd like to announce a moment of silence, if we could here, and that's enough for AIM. Anyway, boys, this sounds like we had a good chat here. Just want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Inaugural podcast. Get ready for more. If you like what you like, come check us out. edge-tech.net. Got articles, got things coming. Podcasts always be updated. Really appreciate you listening. I'm Howard.
I'm Antonio.
I'm Devin.
Thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.